Hi everyone, welcome to week 1 of crisis intervention. This week we are focusing on the definition of crisis and what it historically means, what it currently means, and a little bit of everything in between. So crisis generally embodies both danger and opportunity for the person experiencing the crisis. It's important to recognize that a crisis for one person is not a crisis for another. However, it's important to be empathetic if you are with someone or have a friend, family member, coworker who has a crisis, but we'll come back to that. I digress. Crisis usually can be time limited, but may develop into a series of recurring trans-crisis points, meaning on top of a crisis, there may be several others, kind of like an earthquake. There are aftershocks afterwards, because usually with a crisis, there's a lot of challenges that come with it, and to overcome it and move forward from it. I don't like to say get over it. Even in my therapy practice, I like to reframe it to work through it, process it, and move forward from it and accept it for what it is. And you'll probably hear me say that a lot throughout this course. Any questions, like I always say, feel free to email me. All right, so a crisis is often complex and difficult to resolve. Why is this? Why are crises so difficult? Why are they challenging? And what if it's a repeat crisis, such as a family member relapsing from an addiction? You've been through it before. Is it harder? Is it easier? Is it hard to gauge? What does it depend on? Circumstances. Does it depend on what type of drug they use? Does it depend on if they have children? Well, honestly, it depends on a lot of different things. The life experience of crisis and other human service workers may greatly enhance their effectiveness in crisis intervention. That's something that we will focus on this semester, is the individuals who specialize in crisis intervention, such as myself. And I'll get into that further along in this course. Crisis contains the seeds of growth and the impetus for change. What are the barriers for growth after a crisis? What are the steps that need to be taken to get there? And the impetus for change. What does the impetus mean? How is it a motivator for change? How does one get to that point where they are ready for change from a crisis? And does a crisis in general indicate that there needs to be a change? Crisis confronts people with choices. Good choices, bad choices, somewhere in between, because it's not dichotomous. So what are those choices, and why do we have choices in a crisis? What if you do nothing? That actually is a choice, but usually not the best one, because if a crisis exists for a reason. Crisis also presents emotional disequilibrium and disorganization. That is a lot. Those are some big words, right? So emotional disequilibration. So it throws people's emotions off. And it throws them off their normal daily track, and it can be really hard to essentially bounce back from it, because there's about 20 different steps that usually have to happen before you can bounce back from something. Finally, the resolution of crisis and the personhood of crisis workers interrelate. So think about the personhood of a crisis worker. What type of qualities and education and tools and skills does someone working in crisis have to possess, and how can they process what they see? Because a lot of times, especially frontline crisis workers, see a lot. And as we've seen throughout this pandemic, our frontline healthcare workers, for example, have seen a lot of trauma, a lot of death, a lot of grief, and a lot of just emotional, mental, physical exhaustion. And the pandemic is a great topic, and I might develop a separate discussion point, more loosely based, not structured, just so we can discuss and process the pandemic and how it relates to a crisis, because it indeed is. All right, so your first assignment, your post, will be discussing, let me pull it up so I get it correct, a crisis from your past. Now, in this discussion post, what I would really like you to focus on is how you look back on the crisis. So something from your past, preferably. If you have a really good crisis that's, perhaps more recent or currently ongoing, and you want to process it with me, discuss it, figure out how to structure it for this post, you can, but please do it tomorrow or Tuesday so you have it prepared for Wednesday, but preferably something from your past so you can actually reflect on it a little bit more and focus on the paradox of the crisis presented rather than on the crisis itself. So give it a brief, direct summary of the crisis and then focus and reflect on how it has affected you emotionally, physically, how it has changed your life. What was the impetus for change? What were the factors that led up to this crisis in your life? Any questions about that, please feel free to email me or feel free to post in the discussion as well, because you may get a response from me and several other of your peers that is very beneficial in providing different perspectives and insight that you may have never thought of. Now, the second post is discussion question 2. Research an example where the media has played a positive or negative role in the time of crisis. What is your opinion about the example? So that is your specific opinion. Do you think the media coverage was necessary? Why? Now, I am going to encourage you all, please keep this discussion respectful. And if you are going to provide some facts, make sure they are facts and not assumptions, and you have to cite your sources, and I will address that. If I see sources not cited and theories that have been presented, I would like them to be cited, because that is the professional and academic thing to do. So I know there was a lot of controversy when it comes to media coverage and has been for years, so that's why I would like this to be an educational and a respectful discussion post. All right. I look forward to seeing all of you in the course room and in the discussion posts. Remember, they are due Wednesday. Both of them due Wednesday, and 3 discussion replies each over 3 different days. Any questions, please email me, and have a great evening.